Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Plat Rats Podcast, Episode 3. I'm here once again, Vancer, with Wally Walrus. How you
What's
doing?
up, everyone? So I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing all right. So today we're talking about the RLCSX Fall European Regional Event 1, Stage 2, and Playoffs. So, huge mouthful, but I'm going to need to be specific because there's going to be a lot of these throughout the year. And I plan to keep this going for as long as I, can keep it up. And I assume Wally will be here with me, and I don't know, maybe we'll bring in some other people every now and again if we need to or if we want to. We'll start with stage 2, and then we'll get to playoffs. We have a lot more to talk about the playoffs, so I think stage 2 we'll kind of run through quickly. So, do you have anything you want to talk about right off the bat for stage 2?
I think the main thing that I was going to talk about for stage two was the big matchup that I found to be most interesting was the Top Blokes Triple Trouble. That was
Hmm.
in round four on the high matches.
Yeah.
And that was a game five. I went to game five. And what was interesting about it was they started off where Top Blokes were pretty dominant to start it off. It was a 2-0 win in game one, and then a 5-3 win for game two. So plenty of goals. It's a 7-3 ratio for 2 games. You're averaging pretty solid goal tally right there.
Yeah.
So all things considered, great start. But then Triple Trouble was like, oh, we're at the party now. So they go in and then win the next 2 games, scoring 4 goals in each. And then you're just split even 2-2 in the series. Big changes right there. It's like a whole new game. You're thinking, is this a reverse sweep situation, or are we still thinking Top Blokes got this in the bag? So finally comes down to it for game five, and Top Blokes squeezes one out, winning 2-1 to finish it off in regulation. And I remember the goal come in fairly late. I don't think it was super, super early, but it was fairly late in it, and they had to hold on, though, at the bitter end for it. So exciting game in general. It's just really it's way more exciting, in my opinion, to see a longer series because it just means more Rocket League.
Yeah.
And I think anybody us two and anybody listening loves Rocket League, and more Rocket League you see, more happy you become.
Yeah.
Especially when it's quality Rocket League and you're seeing these scores. And only the first game and the last game had under 3 goals.
Yeah. So,
The other 3 games,
consistent scoring.
one team scored at least 3 goals in all. So consistently top Rocket League presented, and it was um, this set Top Blokes to be able to push forward, and then they got to move on to the eventual playoffs. So this was a big win for them. So then they didn't have to keep playing. That was their third win,
Yeah.
and that meant that Triple Trouble had to keep going.
And a big thing I was saying last week was seeing these three teams, which I'm about to talk about, Dignitas as well, but Top Looks, Dignitas, and Triple Trouble all picking up players from the Clappers. And as you were saying, Triple Trouble and Top Blokes having Archie and Calix, who I think were the standout players for both teams. Archie, this past weekend, both in Stage 2 and especially in the playoffs, was a monster. But I'd say it's
Completely agree. Completely agree.
I'd have to say he's probably, well, I don't know, because they ended up not taking the entirety of the playoffs. I think they ended up coming in second, right? Even still, I think Archie might have been you know just the player of the tournament, honestly, at least in these last 2 days. And Calix, could have been that if they didn't then lose, to Top Blokes and then to Dig in round five. Um, so like all of these players, who I was saying, like when these teams play each other, it's going to be fun to watch because they'll want to play well against their former teammates, and they did not disappoint in any way. It was a lot of fun to watch. Um, I should actually mention, before I actually get too deep into this, the teams that did move on from the Swiss stage into the actual playoffs were Guild, Vitality, Solary, BDS, Top Blokes, Giants, Dig, and Magnifico. The kind of surprises were Barca and Endpoint, I guess I'd say were probably the two surprises coming in as low as they did.
I think also Triple Trouble being a team that didn't make it through was a little surprising because if memory serves me correct, they were the team that won the grid week
Yes.
one, if
Yes.
I'm correct on
Yeah,
that.
you are.
And so seeing them do a nice big feat right there by winning the grid week one and then coming into stage two of the regional event, you're like, oh, if you're beating these teams, maybe you can be stepping it up and then proving yourself as one of the higher end tiers of the Rocket League community. And then to they'd made it all the way to the fifth round, so
Yeah.
it's not like they got instantly swept out, but still surprising to see them win week one and then not make it
Yeah.
through for the next
I
stage.
think the only, the upside for Triple Trouble not making it through is you look at the teams they lost to. They lost to BDS, the eventual winners, Top Blokes, the eventual second place finishers, and Dignitas, who were last year's regional champs. And it's just, it's Dignitas. Like, if those are your three losses, like those are, if I'm Triple Trouble, like those are losses I'm totally okay taking every now and again. Like, their three losses were against some really strong teams.
Yeah, I think that definitely serves a point. The tough part to look at it though is their one of their wins was VNC
Yeah,
or Venk, and they had to
Venick,
go to game
Venick, I
five for
think.
that,
Yeah,
who didn't win a single series. And then Stormtroopers, who we touted last week on this podcast, and they disappointed us, sadly.
yeah,
Um, but we knew going in that they weren't a powerhouse in the Rocket League,
yeah,
professional Rocket League stage. But we didn't think that they were gonna flutter to a 1-3 daily finish for that.
yeah. But I mean, I think 1-3 doesn't look good on paper, but again, there's so many of these 16 teams, like none of them are weak by any means. So I mean, and again, you look at the teams they played, Top Blokes and Triple Trouble. The only one maybe you could argue is hopefully they should have beaten the Monkeys, but the Monkeys, that would have only guaranteed them to get to round five, not even guaranteed to get them in. So it's sometimes that's just kind of how it falls. But not to say it was all still very exciting Rocket League through all that. But I was saying Triple Trouble's final game against Dignitas was their final loss to knock them out, and I think that's kind of the game I want to talk about now. Triple Trouble again. Triple Trouble Dignitas. Joria's former Clappers player, and wait, Triple Trouble is Calix. And
Yeah,
Calix, the former Triple Trouble player. Calix, I think, was their best player during that series. So again, no disappointment there. He played unbelievably well. But I think the player to watch for that series, I highly recommend going back to watch it, just to watch Violent Panda. He played some of the best Rocket League I have seen in a long time, in terms of like his like offensive ability. Like
those passes were
he
top notch.
I think I don't have the exact number on how many goals Joria has scored, and Yukio as well, but holy cow! Like every single pass from Panda was an excellent one to get around like one or two players to give his teammates tap-ins or one-on-one chances in front of the net. Like I think Dignitas uh, during this stage two was was looking like their old selves again. Like their passing was so strong, and I think one of the only things that can kind of beat their passing right now is a team like BDS, who we saw them play earlier, who was just so fast, and that's going to be something we continue to talk about with the BDS team as we kind of get into the playoffs here, where they're it's hard to ignore them when they're the eventual winners, and they do it just through just beating down the other team and just beating them to every ball through the midfield. But again, through the Triple Trouble dig, I noticed there were a lot of posts for Triple Trouble really cost them that series too. There were many times where I don't remember the scoreline for a lot of the games, but I remember them all being fairly close, and Triple Trouble having a lot of time getting it underneath the crossbar. I think, there were some games where they lost by one and hit a crossbar twice or three
Yeah.
times. So, you kind of turn that around. Not even like improve your shooting, just have a better day. Like just not getting unlucky. That's a team that can beat Dignitas potentially. But, there's a lot of whiffs from both teams, which was really funny to watch. Like it just made it for like even more exciting and then like exhilarating because you never know when the next mistake is going to come out. Um, but then uh, as I was saying, keep talking about Dignitas. They played BDS earlier in the day, and that was another one of my favorite games to watch. That's again, Dignitas looking really strong, but just running into a better team. Where like Yukio was actually looking solid in that series. He was hitting his mark and like getting passes off. I think he made a couple beautiful passes to Panda, showing the chemistry is still there between those two. But that series, Mark by 8, like Monkey Moon was insane, but like Mark was another level that series. He played so well, and it's I don't know, it was just I recommend just going and watching those series. Anything Dignitas played really last during the event stage 2, it was a good game. They were really in form. Whether they were winning or losing, it was just like still very entertaining to watch. Um, I don't have much to say about it, but the Guild Top Blokes game had I can't remember which game of the series it was now, but they had almost a 9-minute overtime, and that alone was just incredibly fun to watch. So you can go watch that series simply for that game, and it seems like Top Blokes, the old Veloce roster, are really good at getting into these long games. They did it in Season 8 Worlds, and they're doing it again here.
It was game 5.
It was game
now,
5. Oh,
yeah, that was to win it.
see, yeah, even more so. Go watch it. I thought it was game 5, but I was like, I don't want to say that because if it's wrong, it'll look dumb. But yeah, that was a fun series to go back and watch just for that game alone, honestly. Um, and that's kind of all I really have to say about about stage 2. Guild with three and 3 win, or like went 3-0, 3 wins clean. Vitality same thing. So those were looking like the top teams going into the playoffs. But as we're going to talk about here in a minute, um, you know, doesn't always, doesn't always work out that way. So, do you have anything else to say about stage 2 actually before we move on?
I think stage 2 is pretty covered. It was
Okay.
And then I'm ready to talk about the playoffs.
All right. So for the playoffs, I'll just say briefly, BDS won the whole thing and looked so strong doing it. We can kind of go over them. I think we're going to go over this sort of game by game, and talk. We'll try to keep it brief on each team or each game and get through the end because I feel like it's already probably running a little long. BDS Giants, that game or that series rather, was very close. I think one of the only teams to get close to matching BDS's speed is the Giants. They're a really good team moving it through the midfield, and that can really, or stopping in the midfield, and that can really slow down a team like BDS. And because of that, a lot of tight games, a lot of low scoring games. 3 of the 5 games went to overtime, and I think it was 2 for Giants, 1 for BDS in terms of winning. BDS had another win just by 1 goal, and then Game 5 was, and I think it was an early lead for BDS, and then they just kept slowly building the lead over the course of the game, and won that series in 5. I don't know if you have anything to say about it as well.
Not much. I definitely think these two teams are so exciting. We talked about it last time, I believe, where we talked about how fast Giants can play and just the skill that they all have with each other. And then I've noticed there's a lot of chemistry with the BDS roster, especially adding extra now. So then you get to, he kind of seems like he kind of is a little bit farther back from what I've watched of them. Not fully just a defender, but
yeah,
it seems like it allows Mark Beide and Monkey Moon to do what they need to do, which is really fun to watch because their quality is top notch. Yeah. It was proven by winning this series against the Giants, who are also another formidable opposition.
All right. So yeah, that series again, like I said, a lot of fun, a lot of overtime. If you like close series, watch that one for sure. Um,
Yeah,
next
3
up,
overtime games,
yeah.
plenty.
Next up, we got Vitality Dig. A tale as old as time between these two teams. Do you want me to start again on this one?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So throughout the series, Vitality was really big on just peppering Dignitas's backboard and just like sort of waiting for their chance on an open net because of how defensive Dig has been playing this season. You just keep putting shots on, keep the pressure going. Eventually, there'll be an opening, and Vitality really, really kind of put that to them, especially in Game 1. Game 2, Dignitas looked great. They were playing much better through the midfield. Um, and their passing and their rebound control were much better. Game 3, more of the same from Game 1, Vitality peppering the net. And then Game 4, I think was some of Yukio's best play through this tournament. Yukio was shooting really well and making really nice passes, and that one falling to overtime and another Vitality win. So a lot of high scoring, 4 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, 5 goals. So just about a goal a minute, on average for all these games, and a nice nearly 3 minute overtime in a series deciding game. So another fun one, and it's Dig Vitality. What more could you ask for? So do you have anything to say?
not really. I did not get to catch the
Okay,
Vitality Dignitas one. I didn't watch that one. I
gotcha.
did watch the Top Bloke Stollery series
There you go.
though,
Go
and
for it. It's
that's the
all you.
next one. I did catch this one, and it was very similar to the other Top Bloke series that we talked about earlier, where Top Blokes wins the first two, and then loses the second two, and then you get the question of reverse sweep or not, and then um, they put it away for Game 5. The thing is, though, even though it got to a Game 5, in my opinion, it never really felt like Top Blokes were that. I wasn't as worried for them because just the sheer goal numbers they scored versus Solary, like
Mm-hmm.
throughout the whole 5 games, um, they scored 17 goals for Top Blokes,
Jeez.
and then
An 8 for
um,
Solary.
eight for Solary. Big difference in all of Top Blokes' victories were 2 of them were by 5 goals, and the other one was by 1. But it never really felt like their offensive prowess
Yeah.
throughout the game and presence was
They never felt desperate
miles
for goals.
above Solaria. So strong defense, especially in Game 4. Game 4 went to overtime and ended 1-0. So it's just a slugfest in that sense. So this series was interesting to watch, but it was also one that you never really were like, oh, who's going to win it? Because you always were in your head, you're always just thinking Top Looks has it. So
Yeah.
still fun to see 5 games of Rocket League, and you get to see nice defense in those Solary wins, but in the other ones, there was plenty of offense shown for Top Looks specifically.
Yeah, and I think a big part of this series was a lot of early goals. Like I think just about every game, aside from the
Yep.
one that went 1-0 in overtime, there was a goal in the first minute or like first 30,
Yep.
40 seconds of the game. Like I know game 1 Solary jumped out early, but by the 1 minute mark they were already losing 2-1. Like even when Solary like had an early lead, by the time early ended they were already losing in some of these games. And it was a lot of like in game 3 Top Lokes would score early, and then by the 1 minute mark it would already be tied again by Solary. It was a lot of early goals. So this is a fun series to watch because as soon as the game starts, you're immediately hooked into the series for each game, and I think that was a lot of fun to watch. And again, Archie on Top Lokes, the player to watch I think for this tournament.
Yes.
Archie played unbelievably well, especially during this series. Game 1, him and Casio both picking up hat tricks, and that was really like a mood setter for the series. And after that, it's like they had the confidence to win even after losing 2 straight. There was never any doubt in my mind that they'd find a way to win in Champions Field for the final game. So that's all I really have to say about that one. Fun series. Watch it for Archie. Watch it for a lot of goals.
Moving into Magnifico Guild. This series was big quick turnaround in my opinion, where it was Guild in the first game looked like they were hitting their mark. We were talking about last time where Guild's chemistry is a big thing, especially when you have Scrub Killa on the team, and it looked like they were pretty set in stone. It was like, ooh, is Magnifico not really, is the hype over? Because their team's pretty new, so it's like, is that fairy tale almost done? And then they go on to win the next 3 games, pretty handily as well. Last game they did have to go to overtime, but next 2 they only allowed 1 goal. So it's pretty amazing to see how well that they can turn something around and shut down such an offensive team. I believe, and I think anybody can notice how offensively talented the Guild team is when you have Scrub Killa, Nolly, and Tho. All those players, in my opinion, are offense first, and I don't think that's always a bad thing. And I'm not saying especially Scrub is definitely an offensive first kind of guy from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And Nolly and Tho kind of have the same kind of feeling about it. None of them are bad defensively, but offensively is what they thrive in. And for Magnifico, for 2 straight games, to only hold them to 1 goal in 2 games, pretty astonishing right there. So and we were talking about this as well. Magnifico's midfield defense wins them games.
Yeah.
That is what they have over a lot of teams. It's just the ability in midfield to just stop the counterattack, and then you're able to push. Because if you have to wait till you're in your own end to start a counterattack, gives the other team plenty of time. If you do in the midfield, that quick turnaround, instantly you could be on 2, and it could be a 2-on-1, 3-on-1. Sometimes get lucky with 2-on-0s or 3-on-0s. So that's how they win their games, and it was pretty much on display, especially versus Guild. So that's how they were able to shut down their offense. But that's all I got for that one.
Yeah, and I know, like, as you were saying, game 1, Guild scored 4 goals, and then they only scored 4 for the rest of the series. And I think, a big part of that is I think my favorite player on Magnifico right now is Demensa, just being an absolute monster in the midfield, never losing the ball somehow. And I think I don't know if you saw, like, at the very start of game 1, Magnifico was having some issues. I don't know what was going on. There was a lot of chatting going on. Of course, we couldn't see the game chat, but there was a lot of players chatting in the game chat during game 1.
Yep.
So I think they were down 2-0 by the time they kind of actually started playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time they were down 4-0, I think Greasy put in the chat something along the lines of like, can we restart this game, or is it too late at this point? And of course, at that point, it was already too late. They managed to score 2, but too little, too late. Because I think Guild scored like 2 goals in the first minute of the game, and at that point,
you
it was just
can
like
definitely
the
see
ties were set.
the defensive once they started working together, that defense just definitely solidified up.
Oh, I think I remember. I think Greasy said his music, like the music in Rocket League, was like on and way too loud. I think if I'm remembering correctly. So like he couldn't hear comms and he couldn't hear like the game very well. So it's I'd recommend watching the series just to see, that was just kind of funny to watch, and thankfully it didn't cost them. It didn't cost them the series. Game 2 was in like just a mechanics fest for Magnifico. Their first 3 goals were all double taps from different players, each one better than the last. It was like, you're like, oh, that's the goal of the game, and then another double tap comes in, and then another double tap comes in. So, and it really shows the ability on this Magnifico team. All 3 players being able to do that in one game, like, speaks volumes of their mechanics and just their solo abilities, let alone their team play. Game 3, again, a lot, I feel like a big thing in this playoffs was a lot of early goals. Magnifico had won the game 2-1. Both of their goals came in the first minute. And then game 5, they go down 2-0, have the resilience to score the 2 to come back. And then Atomic scores a beautiful flip reset in overtime to end the series. So from beginning to end, the series is like 2 goals in the first minute of the series and a flip reset to end the series. It's action the whole way through. So that one was a lot of fun to watch. And we got to see Magnifico, kind of a Cinderella team, continue to move on and play well. And I think that was another fun thing to see from this series, because a lot of these teams, are pretty well established teams or like high in the RLRS or already strong RLCS teams outside of Magnifico, and to see them, you know, not just going out in the quarterfinals but actually making it to the semis was really fun to see. Okay, so BDS Vitality, again, the incredible speed of BDS was very much on display. We had two pretty long overtimes in game 2 and 3. But in the end, BDS was just too good and ended up shutting out Vitality in game 6 and game 7. No, sorry, in game 5 and game 6. They only went to 6.
Yeah, the final 2 games.
Yeah. I think honestly, my player to watch, like, of course, Mark and Monkey Moon were both amazing for BDS, but Extra really stepped up in this series offensively. He had so many big goals, and really redeemed himself for one of the, he allowed, was it in overtime? I think he accidentally centered it just like right to an open net. I think to lose their game in overtime, or at least it was a big goal that ended up costing him a game. But throughout the series, he had so many big time goals, and so where's my? Oh, there it is. Like he scored extra. In game 5, scored 5 seconds in to take the in a game where they didn't get scored on. So the game-winning goal could have come 5 seconds in, but at the 0 second mark, he puts another one in anyways. The only 2 goals for that entire game were extra at the very beginning and at the very end. Game 6, 5 seconds in, again extra scored. Both of those games only needed 1 goal, and extra scored both of them 5 seconds into the game. And then he played so well. Game 3, I believe, he also scored the goal that put them into overtime with like a second left or something like that. There was one of those kind of goals, or was that maybe in game 2? Either way, extra played really clutch offensively in the series, and that kind of showed that the BDS isn't just a two-headed beast; it's a three-headed one when extra's really on it. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from this series. I don't know if you have anything.
Not much. It's definitely the speed there, and it kind of shows where Vitality are right now, where it's Alpha has all of the speed for their team, and there isn't as much through, especially KDOP. And Fairies has some speed, but it's definitely a lot of it's going through Alpha, and you put it where they're playing a lot through. They're playing where Alpha's doing all of the work a lot of the times, and it's not a lot of them being able to show off all of their class because they're still world-class players and multiple time world champions, but it's like they're molding their game to Alpha's because he's playing better right now, and I think they need to make it where they can all excel instead of just only having it be Alpha will, and then once in a while KDOP and Fairy get the chance to pop off.
Yeah, while you're talking there, I was just looking over my notes. I was saying he scored to get an overtime in one of those games. He actually did it in both games 2 and games 3. Like in game 2, they were down 2-0, and he scored twice in like the final minute, basically, including a goal with 1 second left, and then they won that in overtime. And then game 3, he scored in the final minute to get an overtime where they eventually lost. But in every single game, extra had a big goal, basically. Aside from, I think, game 4, I don't think he scored in, but he was a big part of that BDS team for beating Vitality. So I think that's all I have to say about BDS Vitality. That was a really fun one. I think it was a great series, but I think there are definitely better ones in these playoffs. I think you watch the series to see extra. Is the biggest takeaway.
Yeah. And then I think we can move to the Top Blokes Magnifico series.
Do you want to start with that one then?
Yeah, I can do this one. Top Blokes. This series was a little flip-floppy. It started off with a nice Top Blokes win, but it wasn't very convincing. They did have to go to overtime, and it was only 2-1. So it was still a very even series. There wasn't really one team clearly in front and one clearly behind yet. And then Magnifico's midfield defense just took over for the next 2 games, being able to shut down, especially Archie for top blokes and making sure that they are at bay, but then they were just let loose. And they scored 13 goals in the next 2 games. It's pretty unreal. And so for them to be able to do that right after, even against a Magnifico team known for its great midfield defense, and that's their strength. So for that to be the amount of goals they scored to finish out the series and win it in 6 was pretty strong and a great showing to push them straight into the final. So it was just a lot of fun seeing offense versus a strong defense. And it's not even that Magnifico isn't good offensively or top blokes aren't good defensively.
Yeah.
But it was just Austin. Archie was just, as we've talked about repeatedly, top of his game. And the rest of the team was just also on great form throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I think this series was a lot of fun to kind of see how top blokes kind of got used to the way Magnifico was playing through the midfield, because as you're saying, it was pretty low scoring through the first 3, only scoring 5 goals, and then through the next 3 games they had 13 goals. So it was really once they had to try and figure out how to play around Magnifico, and once they did, they were just getting Archie the ball, and Archie played so great in this series. But like for game 2, it was looking pretty back and forth. But Magnifico after game 2, and especially after taking game 3, looked like they were in the driver's seat, because with game 2, Magnifico was down 2-0, and then with around a minute left, the comeback started, and they won it before they even got to overtime. I think they scored like a second left. So like they were looking strong. A lot of back and forth in game 4, where it was like it seemed like anytime one team would score, the other would score pretty quickly. Game 6 was, again, Archie was unreal. Archie had 5 goals in game number 5, and the passing for top blokes was looking really strong. I think that's how you kind of beat a stout midfield team like that, is to try and get the passes around them and not move in straight lines up the field. Just kind of move a little bit east-west and try to get them, not knowing what direction you're going to come from when you attack the goal. And then
completely agree.
One thing that really came out in this series was Magnifico's physical play. They had a lot of their goals ended up coming from like bumps and demo plays. So the more they can kind of work that into their system, I think as well as their like double taps they were scoring against Guild, like this team is a really strong, well-rounded team. And once they start to kind of elevate each one of those things more and more and more, they're going to look really strong. Well, even stronger. They already look really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, again,
I think we're good to talk about the final.
Yeah, watching for Archie. Archie. Anytime you see top looks play, just check out how Archie's doing, and that'll tell you. That'll tell you if top looks are going to win or not.
You don't even have to look at the score. Just see what his point totals are, and you'll know if they're doing well or not.
And now we can move on to the finals, because the last two, Vitality BDS and Magnifico Top Blokes for the semifinal games, and now we've got the finals between Top Blokes and BDS. Do you want to start with this one?
I think you definitely take the lead on it.
Okay. On my sheet here I wrote BDS. Oh, okay, never mind. I thought I wrote BDS versus BDS. BDS versus Top Blokes. BDS coming with a lot of speed, and Top Blokes coming in with really strong passing. Like, those are the two things that, like, coming into the series were the things to watch. Again, it seems like anytime Top Blokes plays, a lot of early goals scored, both for and against, it seems like. We had a strong 6-game series, 2 of them going to overtime, one of those ending 1-0, and even still, it was a great game. It was shockingly more defensive than I thought. I think both teams knew what the other was capable of, and was trying to figure each other out, I guess. And it seemed like BDS just, I feel like it's a lot easier to replicate speed than it is to replicate passing. And because of that, BDS ended up taking, after being tied in the series 2-2, took the final 2 games to win the series 4-2. I can get into some more specifics later, but I just want your general thoughts on the series.
I think it was just a lot of respect shown to the other team
Mm-hmm.
where one team's super good at the passing and one's very quick. So then you want to kind of, I think they both played in a way where they wanted to defend the other one's strength. And that's definitely a strategy. And I think they both implemented it. There's the other strategy would be only do your strength and then go from that. So it was interesting to kind of see that game and that series overall. There were two OT games that were very close. So it's a lot more defensive, and I totally agreed with you. And I think a lot of that was down to where they wanted to defend the other one's strength and then go from that.
Actually, looking at my notes here, I realized I made a mistake earlier when I was talking about that extra um, essential own goal. That was actually in this series, and it was in overtime. So I was right before. I just had the series wrong. Um, and I think a thing for the two wins you look for top blokes are that game 4 where extra makes a really bad play and it costs them the game. And you look at game 1, Mark by 8 has a really bad whiff in that game, and I want to say that was to take a lead early, I think, or maybe to take the lead. It was I think a game leading goal at that point. And and again, I think in this series, extra again, Mark by 8 and Monkey Moon were so good, but I think extra came in incredibly clutch in the later half of the series. In game 1, kind of giving his team space. Game 2, playing excellent, making nice passes. I want to say he scored the overtime goal for game 2 as well. Um, Mark by 8 in game 3. The only goal of the game was an incredible solo play, and again, I think that's why you sometimes got to give Mark by 8 the MVP if you're looking solely at a BDS perspective. Because he was able to kind of do those plays on his own, where it seemed like a lot of extras plays were a lot of team plays, and he was just on the end of it. Um, and then again, was that game 5? Yes, game 5, BDS early, extra scoring a big goal, and then game 6 once again extra scoring to the opening goal of the game to make it 1-0, and they just in both games 5 and 6. Once they BDS had a lead, they just kind of played their game and very slowly built it back up. Like they weren't trying anything crazy. They weren't gunning for more goals. They were kind of letting them come naturally. And I think that's BDS plays really well when they have a lead, and I think that's a big reason why they won those last 2 games.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, when BDS has a lead, it's like how quickly they can. Having speed is really helpful offensively, but then also defensively, you're able to get to those cutoffs a lot quicker, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. And when you have a lead, you're not really worried about using your speed to cut it for the break. It's more of cut it to stop the goal, and it can lead to those breaks. But you definitely are working more to hold on to lead, and the speed definitely there can be utilized in different ways, but still effective.
Yeah, because now instead of like using their speed to kind of rush upfield, they're using their speed to kind of make challenges and win balls in the midfield, and they just eat up time. And I think that's and then with their speed, their openings come on counterattacks or just on potential solo plays because all of these players are like mechanically really gifted. But I think that's our lightning round going through the playoffs. I think that's kind of everything, unless you have a little more to talk about for that final.
No, I think it was a great performance by BDS to win it. I think we covered a lot of the bases.
All right. So I think the two were. It's hard because I want to pick like I guess my 3 players to watch through I guess through the playoffs are the 3 players I keep saying: Mark by 8 for BDS, Extra for BDS, and Archie for Top Blokes. All 3 just, and I think even the Dignitas Vitality series. Again, I'm a bit biased being a Dignitas fan, but again, I think Panda played excellent in that series too. But because they only played one game, it's kind of hard to you know say like, oh, look at how good they were. But I think those 3 players, Mark, Extra, and Archie, were my players to watch for definitely the playoffs, but also like stage 2. I think they played solid.
Totally just agree. Basically took the main ones out of my mouth.
Okay, let me just get your overall thoughts. Any from the entirety of European Regional Event 1 what any upsets, any surprises. Obviously, Liquid, Oxygen, but like, what were the things that you kind of noticed that moving forward are going to be big? Like, I'm curious if you
I
have
think the
any of
big
those
thing that I
thoughts.
can just take away is it's like teams need to be more versatile in the types of like system they're in, not team system, but the system of how they're playing their games is where it's we've got a playoff kind of thing, we've got a Swiss style, and then we've got a group stage type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think teams being able to play in that kind of mindset and being able to switch it for one type of series and another thing, because before they were really worried about going from a 5 game series to a 7 game series. And that's really the only difference you got.
Yeah.
This is more of a you're playing this kind of tournament style and then you're changing it up really fast and you're going to another one. So I think teams being versatile in how well they can perform
Yeah. Being
in
kind of
different styles.
being familiar
Um,
with the way the brackets work,
yeah,
and
I
yeah,
think that's a big thing I was noticing.
especially in comparison to the grid, because it's like we see teams performing really well on the grid that aren't performing well here. So yeah, I think that's a big thing, and I think also like even in terms of also like team play as well, like being versatile in the ways you can attack as well, and like kind of it. A lot of teams that have one play style, like we're simply going for the backboard. We're simply going for solo plays. We're simply going for passing plays. Usually are the teams that are good because they're really strong at that one thing, but when they play another team that knows that, it's not as effective. Where I feel like has BDS and Top Blokes are both teams with like a lot of strong solo plays. They can pass the ball if they need to. Like they're really really well rounded teams. And I think that's something we're gonna see more and more. Is like soon all three players are gonna be good at all three aspects of the game, and that's what I think. It's gonna be a lot less individualized and a lot more like the ceiling for Rocket League is gonna continue to keep climbing as these players get better. And also there's teams like the Magnificos that are, that no teams have really gotten to play. Because again, like someone like Greasymeister was retired up until like 12 days before this season began, and now they're out here getting what like third, fourth because there was no battle between them and Vitality. But yeah, so they got the third, fourth prize for the prize pool, and like that's a team that no one was expecting to play. So if you don't know how they play, that can also kind of catch you off guard. And I think that's what a lot of teams are gonna have to watch out for. And the more we play, I don't think it's gonna bode well for Magnifico necessarily, because now teams kind of know how they play and they can kind of prepare for it. But who knows? They could surprise us and keep being able to perform at the level they're doing. Um, they're a good team, so I don't see them not doing well. But you know, I'm just excited to see a lot of them improve.
So am I.
And before we close the prize pool, if anyone was curious, we probably should have brought this up at some point during this. Team BES, who won the entire regional event, picked up 351 points, which is huge for kind of securing your place for Worlds potentially, and $30,000. So there's a lot of money being kicked around now in this in this Rocket League system. If they're kicking around this much money, pretty frequently. Top Blokes 250 points, $15,000. Magnifico and Vitality getting third, fourth, picking up 200 points and $8,000. And then if you want to see anything else, you can always check Wikipedia, and it shows you how much all teams have earned. Like even the teams that finished 32nd got $300 and 10 points. So even if you don't do super well in these, every show matters. And we look at a team like Oxygen that didn't make it as far as we would have liked, or same with Liquid, both earning still $900 and 30 points towards that. Granted, it's not the 350 points to get to Worlds, but those are really going to matter when it comes down to the line between them being in or out. So it's going to be fun to track kind of how these points go and see what teams land where and how good they need to perform in each split. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this format.
I'm excited. Even so much Rocket League. Love to watch it.
And this weekend, we'll do all of this again, but for North America, which will be so much fun.
Yes.
And I cannot wait for it. So that's everything for today. We had a lot to talk about. Hopefully we can start to slim some of these episodes down more and more as we kind of get better about talking about them and kind of condense our thoughts easier. But, $100,000 prize pool in the bank for a lot of these teams. And, I look forward to seeing more of it, and stay tuned for next week for North America. Bye, guys.
See ya.